Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 73, Chapter 73, entitled To Be or Not to Be. Izuku felt drained as he sat at the lunch table with Denki, Nato, Fumikage, Tenya, and Uraraka. "Are you okay?" Tenya questioned. He gave a small smile. Tired. I was up early. "Make sure you get a proper amount of sleep. You need to be well rested for the upcoming class assignment," Tenya said. Izuku groaned, letting his head slump and hit the table. Uraraka gave a small laugh. "Don't worry, Deku. I'm sure the villain team leader will create some way for you to put up a fight." "And what's that supposed to mean?" Nato questioned. She gave an apologetic smile. "Sorry, it's just, your team isn't exactly made of the strongest people. I mean, we have the powerhouses on our team, including Momo." "Do not underestimate our friends, lest the predators become the prey. We do not know which of them is the leader, or what they are allowed to do," Fumikage said. Tenya gave a nod. "We should all do our very best and take this exercise seriously." "As seriously as you took the hero versus villain battle exercise?" Denki questioned, giving a grin. Izuku blinked, lifting his head to look up at his friends. "What do you mean?" "While you were fighting with Bakugo, Ida was monologuing and pretending to be a villain. It was very funny," Uraraka said. Tenya huffed. "You didn't have to laugh at me. I was simply giving it my all, just like you guys should during the Civil War." Uraraka's grin turned sly and teasing. "Yeah, maybe you can take out some of us via laughter." Nato scowled. "Just you wait, 1A. Our team's going to kick your butts." "Except we're not just 1A. We also have members of your class with us," Fumikage said, giving an impression of an amused grin. "Shh, don't point that out," Nato said, making a shushing motion. "My beak is sealed," Fumikage deadpanned. The group fell into giggles, only for it to become full-fledged laughter as Dark Shadow showed up and held Fumikage's beak sealed, ignoring the glare that the bird-headed boy gave his quirk. "Besides Civil War, do you know what you're doing in heroics today?" Nato questioned. "Aizawa-sensei mentioned something about Field Gamma and practicing search and rescue," Tenya answered. "Knowing him, he'll probably have some sort of trick." All the students of 1A gave a nod to Kaminari's statement. "We're doing something with Nezu. Vlad actually looked scared when he mentioned Jim Zeta." "Nezu? Do you—" Uraraka started, turning to look at Izuku. Izuku gave a shaky smile. "Yes, I do know. I also know that it's likely you'll be doing it soon as well." "What is it?" Nato questioned. "Sorry, I can't tell you." Tenya frowned. "Is it part of the training that Aizawa-sensei mentioned was confidential?" Izuku gave a nod. "I see. Then we won't ask you about it," Tenya said, nodding decisively and sending a look at the rest of the table mates. Soon, the lunch bell rang, and the students returned to their classrooms. But as Izuku walked through the hall, he couldn't help but think about the words Tenya said, about taking it seriously, giving it their all. Izuku already had a few plans in mind, but he didn't know if the villain team could win. They were outmatched, as Uraraka said. Despite Fumikage telling her to take it seriously, she was underestimating them. Because their team had weaker quirks, they didn't have the obvious powerhouses of Yaoyorozu or Todoroki, or even Tokage or Hananuki. All the recommended students were on the hero team. So was Bakugo and Uraraka, both powerhouses in their own ways. The villain team, on the other hand, didn't have any obvious powerhouses, but there were a lot of versatile quirks. If their team had a chance to win, then he needed to play to everyone's strength. He needed a plan. But even with a plan, could they win? Izuku wanted to bury his head in his hands. This was complicated, and he had a good feeling that Nezu had rigged the whole thing. The teams just seemed so unbalanced. Could it really have been randomly generated that way? Was he just that unlucky? He didn't really know what to do. He knew he had to lead the team, but could he really lead them? Maybe it would be better to let someone else take control. He knew that it was allowed amongst the villain team, and someone else could probably lead them better than him. But as he walked through the halls with his friends, his phone beeped. Earning a reproachful look from Tenya, Izuku glanced at it and sighed. "Nezu," he explained. Though saying the principal's name really shouldn't be much of an explanation, but it was. Tenya gave a nod. "Please make your way to Class 1B to help me with Jim Zeta." Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. "Nezu wants to see me." "All right, take care." He went over to Class 1B and waved at Nato, who looked surprised. "What are you doing here, Izuku?" "Midoriya-kun is helping me with a little experiment of mine," Nezu answered before Izuku could get a word out. "Sorry," Izuku said, more to Nato than the class at large. Then he was sitting with Nezu and making sure the principal didn't hurt Class 1B too badly. Soon, though, the day came to an end, and Izuku headed towards the teacher's lounge, having decided to talk with All Might. He knocked, and Midnight opened the door. She smiled. "What can I do for you, kiddo?" she asked. "Can I talk with Yagi-sensei?" he asked. "Sure thing." She turned and looked over into the room. "Your student is here, Yagi." "Which one?" Yagi's voice returned. There was a snort from Snipe. "Please, everyone knows you and Midoriya have a bond." "Just because I've known young Midoriya longer doesn't mean he is my only student," Yagi protested, appearing in the doorway as Midnight moved out of the way. "Sure, but he is the only one who would come to visit you as Yagi," Cementos added. Yagi grumbled, shooting a middling finger back into the room, and getting laughter in return. "Come, young Midoriya, let's move somewhere else." Just as the door closed, Izuku heard one last comment. "Aw, little Toshinori can't take a bit of friendly teasing," courtesy of Midnight. They walked into one of the small rooms that were set up for comfortable conversing between a few people. "What can I do for you, my boy?" Yagi questioned, giving a reassuring smile. Izuku shifted a bit, hands twisting together. The Civil War exercise." Yagi gave a soft noise of realization. "You're worried about it?" He gave a nod. "What exactly are you worried about?" Yagi questioned. Izuku frowned, giving a slight shrug. You know the team setups, right?" Yagi simply nodded. "And that I'm the leader." "Yes." "How can I lead them?" Izuku asked. I'm not fit to be a leader," he denied. Yagi gave a reassuring smile. "I think you'll do fine." He held up a hand, stalling Izuku's unformed protests. "Let me explain. You want to be an underground hero so you're not in the spotlight, and that's admirable. Oftentimes our underground heroes are even unappreciated. They do a lot of work, and most are never even known for it. But even underground heroes have to lead." Izuku gave a nod to this, and Yagi gave a bit of a mischievous smile. "Besides, you should have some fun with this." "Have fun?" Izuku repeated, startled. "Yes. Would it surprise you to learn that I was on the villain team back when I was in UA?" You were?" "Indeed." Yagi gave a grin. "Of course, I wasn't the leader, but I still did my part. Though I will admit we lost, it was fun to just let loose a bit." Yagi gave a smile. "Just do your best, young Midoriya. Even if you lose, so long as you give it your all, then that's what's important." He swallowed and gave a nod. "Give it his all, huh?" The same kind of thing Tenya said. Izuku bit his lip, missing the jewelry necklace, as he thought about what Yagi had said. But I don't know how to lead, much less lead like a villain." Yagi gave a thoughtful hum. "That is a problem, my boy. Well, to be a good leader, you need to be courageous and know how to work with the people around you to accomplish your goals. You need to know what you're doing, and if there's something you don't know, then work with someone who does know. It's always best to be honest and to communicate with the people around you. Sometimes you can't just brute strength your way to a victory." "Though it helps, right?" Izuku questioned, giving a slight grin. He felt comfortable enough with his mentor to tease him, just a little bit. Yagi gave a startled laugh, a bit of blood dribbling out, which he wiped away. "Yes, my boy, brute strength can help, but really it's better to have a good plan. Being smart can allow you to outwit pure strength any day, though the best is having brains and brawn." Izuku gave a nod, thinking about what Yagi said. "Leading in general is easy. Being a good leader is the hard part. Now, you also asked about how villains lead, and while I can't say much for lower-rank criminals, I do know a good deal about how All for One leads." Yagi paused, leaning back as a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. "He is charismatic. He leads both through fear and loyalty. Mostly through loyalty, no matter how twisted it was. He was also manipulative, of both allies and enemies. He made sure that his followers believed he held their best interest at heart. While he sticks to the shadows of the underworld to this day and age, back in the pre-hero era he was a king of terror. He wrought destruction upon society, leading his enemies into disarray. Izuku noted down some of what Yagi said, wondering if it would be useful. It sounded pretty bad to him to be manipulative like that. Yagi waved a hand. Don't just take my advice, young Midoriya. You have plenty of people you can talk to. You should ask them for their thoughts. You have a week to prepare. Use that time to figure out what you're doing. All right, I will, Izuku said. Thank you for your help. Of course, my boy. It's no problem, Yagi said. Is Aizawa-kun taking you home today? Izuku shook his head. Then would you be okay with me driving you? Yagi questioned. Izuku gave a nod. He wouldn't mind at all. With it now being late, his usual train would have left, along with his friends, and Izuku didn't feel like getting on a train with a bunch of strangers. Plus, going with Yagi would keep away that feeling of cold for a little bit longer. Was it bad that he was starting to dislike going home to his apartment? It was cold. Before UA, it had been his safe haven, where he could hide away from everyone. It felt warm then. But now he had adults he could trust, people his own age he was friends with. Around them he felt warm, happy. But at his home he felt cold, lonely. He left with Yagi, and soon they were taking his car down the streets. Unlike riding with Aizawa and Yamada, Yagi didn't play music. Instead, he had the news on. Don't tell anyone, but I used to break illegal quirk usage daily, Yagi said all of a sudden, as they were sitting at a red light. Izuku let out a startled, confused noise. Well, you know how heroes are allowed to use their quirks, right? They are able to use their quirks to apprehend criminals and villains, but I would use my quirk to travel around the city without having to deal with traffic. And it was faster than driving. I never used to use the car, unless I had to show up for special events in one. Even then, it was usually a limousine that had someone else driving. But with my time reduced, I can no longer travel as I used to. Huh, Izuku said, having never thought about the way All Might would leap from place to place as illegal. After all, every time people saw him, the hero was always stopping some sort of crime or another. The two conversed for a little bit longer, but all too soon Izuku was in his apartment. Alone. Alone with his mom. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 73 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 74 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.